where they're needing to go, and to make sure that the products that they are using are benchmarks, because there's so many products out there that claim all different kind of things, but this really brings it down to the nuts and bolts to show that your product is working, it's doing what it's supposed to do, and people are getting results, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's about not taking a product or using a product or buying a product, but it's that at the end of the day you're getting results with what you're doing, and to me that's the most important thing of anything that we do. So with that being said, we thank you for being here today. ProCare Tech is heading this up, which you can go to procaretech.com and get information that we're talking about today. These live streams, videos that we've done previous, we would love for you to tune in or to go onto that website. The way this is going to go today, the training will last about 3 hours, but every 45 minutes we're going to have a 15-minute restroom, snack break, whatever it is, if you're at your office or your home or wherever you may be, that you've got time to not miss anything, so that you'll see about a 15-minute pause every hour on the hour until we're done. We should be done around 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and it's 10 o'clock, probably 10:05 now, Eastern Standard Time. So we will go ahead and let you know about that, and I think that pretty well takes care of it. So we're going to go ahead and introduce Mr. Billy East. He's been doing this for over 10 years, going all across the United States, testing people with a DPA machine. Mr. Billy East also was the individual that brought to us our product that is flying off the shelf, and people are doing extremely well on the Cardio Vibe, and we are just seeing tremendous results with that. And people get on it and they don't want to get off of it because of how well it's turned around their cardiovascular system with a great quality product. And Mr. Billy East, you can thank him for bringing that to us, and we certainly are happy about that. So with that being said, Mr. Billy East.
Good morning. It's good to be here, and we're going to start off, and I know some of you out there have been through some of the trainings, and I know there's some of you that have not. So we're going to start off just with the basics. You that saw this before, then be patient with us. But the first thing we always do is train people how to handle this machine, which is called the DPA, or Digital Pulse Wave Analyzer. This thing is as durable as you are, but you must handle it with caution. You take care of this thing and it'll be with you a long time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to set this machine up from taking it out of the case to putting it back in the case, and then I'll take it out and I will actually test somebody, and then we will go through the explanation of the testing and get you aware of what we need to be doing. So first of all, this is your digital pulse wave analyzer. This is a Pelican case, and what we do is when we first start with the machine to get it out, there's two snaps on the front of it that you have to literally open, as you can hear them popping open. Open your case up. If you hadn't got one of these, and we're working on getting everybody one, that's a thing to a chart to explain your test by. You've got your electrical cable. You have your probe, and this is something you always want to be careful with. You never want to kink this probe. That's if you do, that's about a $370 to $370 mistake. You reach and get your machine out of the case. You handle it with care. You set it up, and as you'll notice, there's a stand on the back of this thing. Let me forewarn you, don't ever use that. Why they even put it on there, I don't know, but that is one of the worst designs that they have ever made. Now what you do is once you get your machine out, get it to where you can handle it, lay it down flat, take your electrical wire, the one that actually runs the power, you've got a place in the back that you plug it. It's already preset, it's already shaped to that plug. Take it, plug it into your power outlet. Always make sure that your machine is off. Never plug it up with power already to the machine. Once you get your power on, then you take your probe, unwind it. As you know, I wind mine up real careful. And then you'll take this, and there's a place in the side of your machine. This is already to where you just, all you got to do is slip it on. But make sure, once you go into the side of it, you go in straight, firm, and then lock. If it's one that screws down, lock it down. If it's not, there's two different versions of them. Some of them just slide on, some of them just screw on. Then, then we go to this, and this is very, for you that's going to operate this machine on a regular basis, what I'm fixing to show you some things that will keep you from being embarrassed out in the field. The next thing you do is you take your fingers, you push down on the cover. There's a little button on the back of it. You slide that button to the right, release the cover, and open it up. Okay? Then you take your paper out, regardless of how many times you set this machine up. You do this every time. And the reason you do that is if you don't, then sooner or later it will not feed and it will embarrass you. And to cover it, once you get it tight, pull it out, put your fingers back on the cover, pull your button over, push it down, release the button, and it's locked. And what I always do then is I always cut my machine on, okay? Give it just a second to warm up. Once it warms up and it shows a picture of this on the screen, it will have a picture of this on the screen on the machine. If you've got a machine in front of you, you should be able to follow along with what I'm saying. Then, to make sure we're set up, to make sure we got everything the way we should, then you hit the print button. Hit the print button one time and it will print out a sample test, and if it runs without jumping, you've done your job right. Okay? The reason that is so important is when we first started running these machines, nobody told us this. Nobody had any information to tell us what this done. So therefore, some of us learned the hard way that if you don't tighten that paper up, it will stand there and just jump and won't feed, and that's very embarrassing in front of a client that you're already skeptical anyway about what you're doing, so you don't need any mistakes. Now then, that's to set the machine up. Now then, what we're going to do before I pack it is I'm going to run a test on Dr. LeBron. Now, he's been taking the product, so he already tests good. So what you do is always make sure your little LED light is burning. And what I do, and it doesn't really matter which finger you use, but what we do is a safety precaution, because these things, if they prise too far open, then they're not shining on the LED light or the sensor, and therefore you're not getting a good test. So what I do on a man, because most men's hands are big, their fingers are big, I always place it on their little finger, on their left hand, put the light over the cuticle of the fingernail, that's where you're at, and then once you do that, watch the screen of your machine, okay? And as you do, if everybody's got a machine in front of you, on that machine there's a little heart that jumps up. I wish we could get that a little closer in, but there's a little heart that jumps up and it starts beating. If that heart is not beating, then you are not getting contact, okay? And there's several things. We'll go through that through the explanation of the test. Right now we just want to get a test run to where we'll have something to go with. Once the little heart starts beating, it's beating properly, then you've got good contact. You reach and you punch restart, okay? When you punch restart, this machine starts initializing. You are then through. You have no more bearing on what this machine does. It's running the test, and when it gets through, what it is what it is. You have no more effect on the outcome of the test then. So while we got this, and I always set it on 1 minute, and where the entire procedure will take about 2.5 minutes. And it will print out its own test of whatever that client has, and then we'll go through putting the machine up, how to anchor it, how to secure it. In 10 years, I've seen a couple of these machines destroyed. Most of the time, it's because somebody has mishandled the machine. And one thing I'll show you about the case in just a little bit, one lady out in Missouri, one of my clients, right after we started using the machine in 2005, but not anchoring or not closing the case properly, she dumped it out on a cement sidewalk, and that doesn't really fare too well with these plastic machines. Okay, As you can see, the test is over. You reach and get the probe, lay it down gently, and always remember this is this machine's only as careful as you are. Now then, we have this, the test that was run on Dr. LeBron. We'll put it right here, and I'll use that to explain in just a little while. Now then, we want to go through putting it up to make sure that everything is the way it should be. The first thing you do is you cut it off. Switch your machine off. Take your probe, undo it. I know some of this stuff seems childish, but when you're paying the kind of prices you're paying for these machines, it's better to be safe than sorry. Okay, now then, take your probe, stretch it out, get all the kinks out of it. Take it by the probe end, wrap it around your hand and keep it straight. Do not kink this, because if you ever kink that wire and that little light won't come on, then again, I suggest you get you a Ziploc bag or something that once you put it in there, it will hold its form. That's real inexpensive, a real good way to carry your probe to make sure everything's okay. Once we get the probe took care of, then we want to unplug it from our power source. Then you will open this box back up. Okay. Always take your machine with both hands, just like that. Lay it down in the case. On the side of your machine, there's a little slot or pouch. Put your probe in there first. Then wind up your power cord. There should be enough room in that same slot for your power cord. Bring your case down. I'm going to turn it around. Now be careful, pay close attention. If you that right there sounds like this case may be closed. Okay? Don't ever, by that first click, don't ever pick this machine up. If you do, the top of it will pop open. Make sure when you're anchoring this machine that you hear that. Once you've heard that, you can carry the machine. It's safe to carry it anywhere you want to. Do anything you want to with it. I've actually had a wreck. A lady run a red light one morning, hit me, threw my machine all over the automobile. Did no damage to it because it was in the Pelican case. Now then, we're going to do the explanation of the test. And if you'll listen to me, and I don't know whether we're going to have a question and answer session here today or not, but what I'm going to do is we're going to go through several ways of doing this. You can pretty well, if you've got your machine in front of you, here's Dr. LeBron's, and what we do is we will run one of these on everybody that's in the meeting. Okay? We'll be down at Moss Point, Mississippi tomorrow evening. We'll do one of these on everybody in the meeting. Then we'll do an explanation. Now then, what we do is I let everybody hold their own test, and I take this, which is the chart that I use to explain it by. Now, I always start up in the right corner, and you will find a number that's got the letters PR wrote out beside of it, which means pulse rate. What that also stands for is beats per minute of your heart. Whatever that number is, if normal is 65 to 80. Now, each one of you, and I know that most of you have because I've sent them to you, you have a page called a DPA Interpretive Guide. If you don't have one, then you need to get one, because that is going to be that's your guideline to explain this entire test. Tell them what the machine says, good or bad, and go on about your business. Okay, don't be trying to interject anything that we think it might be. Just let the machine tell the tale. But in the right upper hand corner, you'll find pulse rate. If that is 65 to 80, that is normal. Also, you will find down here, you'll find pulse rate, and it will always print out beside of that whether it's normal, slow, or fast. Okay? Now, I think that on Dr. LeBron's test, we're a little bit fast on his pulse rate this morning, but I'm pretty sure that's because of he just got out of the gym, and that will cause things like that. But things that will cause a pulse rate to be slow is if a person is a regular attendant to the workout sessions, their pulse rate will go up while they're working, but on a normal basis it will run slow. The second most prevalent thing that will cause your pulse rate to be slow is you're taking statin drugs or other medications. Now then, things that will cause the pulse rate to be fast, and there's a list of them, again, on that DPA interpretive guide, things that will cause them to be fast. Women, pregnancy, exercise, medications, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, caffeine, certain statin drugs will cause the pulse rate to be fast. But if it is above 80, there is something causing this that we need to get to the bottom of. Now then, the second thing I do, now again, as you learn how to run the machine, and if you want to go another direction and explain it in another direction, that's your business. This is the way I do it. Right underneath the pulse rate, you will find another number, and that is your pH. Not your pH level, but your pulse hydration. The technical term for pulse hydration is stroke volume. That's the medical side of it, and but I'm going to go through the simple things that you explain it to people. Pulse hydration simply means the hydration levels of your blood, whether or not your blood is running thin enough or it's too thick. That number should be, if it's normal, again, you can go right down here and find pulse height, and it will say either normal, low, or high. And if it's too low, then that's a good sign that you are dehydrated. Your blood is dehydrated. Why is that important? Because when your blood gets dehydrated, it runs real thick, and that makes it hard for the heart to pump it into the extremities, to get it out into the fingers, the feet, and remember too, into the brain. So that's something that we need to really pay attention to. Normal, again, is 2 to 8. If it's over that, if it gets above hydration, well, another thing too, on the low side of it, if it's real low, of what that can also point to, and listen to what I'm saying, that is can point to a person being diabetic. You cannot tell them they're diabetic, but it points toward that. You can ask them, are you diabetic? And if it is, then you can show that to them. If this gets into the high range, the chart says the high is 8. Over the last 10 years, we have come to see the history on this machine. Actually, if that number gets above the number 6, then they are beginning to have some issues. And one of the things that can be when it's high is anxiety, depression, also fluid retention. Now, if you've got somebody that you've just run a test on and that's high, most of the time they'll tell you, well, I'm having swelling ankles, I'm having swelling knuckles, things like this. But if they're anxious, the only way to tell it is that if they're telling you are depressed, they got to tell you that. Then the third thing that we always do is call recognition. If you will come down here to the top of your chart where it says number 1, recognition, this is a part of the machine that it recognizes the pulse rate as your heart beats. If you'll look right under that, you'll find where it says a number, pulses, / a number, pulses. If those two numbers wind up being the same, then the machine is recognizing 100% of your pulses. Now, if those numbers are different, the first one will always be lower than the second. And what you do is you take the second number divided into the first number. If that percentage, if you divide, let's say for instance it's 70 out of 80, and you divide the 70 by 80 and that's above 80%, then we're still okay. That's not anything to be alarmed by. But if you see that pulse recognition is below 50%, the first thing you need to do is to turn and rerun a test on them to make sure that you've got a good test. And if it turns out that way again, then that can point towards some other problems. Do not diagnose these people. Do not tell them they got this. Do not tell them they got that. But tell them that it can point towards such things as atrial fibrillation. It can point toward tachycardia, things that keeps the heart from beating. And all atrial fibrillation is where the top and bottom's not talking to each other the way it should. But if it's above 80%, it's not an issue, so don't make anything out of it. The next thing we do is ejection time. If you'll look right down here, number 2, but also over here on the side, you will find ejection time. What this is where the machine is measuring the speed of the aortic valve as it opens and as it closes. Now, if you watch the heart as it beats, the valve opens and closes, the speed of that should be between 260 and 380 milliseconds. Now then, again, down here where it says ejection time, look out beside of it. If that test says normal, there's no issue there. Don't even worry about it. Just tell them you're normal. That's a good thing. If there's something abnormal, the machine will either print short or long. Okay? Now, if it prints short, that means the valve is opening and closing too fast. One of the main things that they say can cause that is people being high in anxiety. And another thing that it can be, and we, again, don't diagnose these people, but this is some things you need to know as an operator. As this valve opens and closes too fast, it can point towards some muscles that's getting weak. Do we have things that will correct that? Yes, we do have some things that will help. Now then, if that machine points out too long, then we know that the valve is opening and closing too slow. Now, on your DPA interpretive guide, you will see about the only thing it says about that is aortic stenosis. Aortic stenosis is no more than the valve getting hard, getting stiff, getting plaqued up, and we will get into a little bit later on what causes all this, but that's what it could be. I think the worst I've ever seen on one was $9.99. That's as high as a machine will test. Now then, we're getting into what I consider, or what over the last 10 years I've come to find out to be the most important part of this test. This is called the PTG waveform. You need to learn what this is. It took me a while to get where I could pronounce it, but what this is called the plethysmogram waveform. What it simply does, it verifies to you and I whether or not there is still any elasticity left in the arteries. If you will go and study and read, you will find that elasticity in the arteries is the way God designed us, simply meaning this: every time our heart beats, every time the left ventricle squeezes blood out, the arteries are supposed to flex, are supposed to open up, which is called the elasticity of the flexibility of the arteries. They open up to receive blood. Blood goes in. Arteries snap closed. They push the blood on down. As it does this in a repetitive motion, it creates what they call a back tidal wave to the heart, coming back to the muscularis or the walls of the artery, feeding back to the heart. And if the walls or the arteries are doing their job, if they're reacting the way they're supposed to react, then it will create a dichrotic notch in the heartbeat. And I don't know where you're going to be able to see this as far away as we are or not, but this dichrotic notch signifies to us, and if you want to look at this, if you want to see a product of the product, this is Dr. LeBrun's test, and there is a good dichrotic notch there, so that's a good thing. What this does, this verifies to us that the arteries are doing their job. They are opening up, they're closing. That gives the heart a little bit of a resting point. Well, now, what if there's nothing there? And let me tell you something, operators, listen to me. You are going to see all kind of variations of this waveform. Recently, we were on a trip to New York. A young man came in. I'm not going to call in names, not put anybody on the spot. But this young man came in and he sat down and he tested, and I immediately asked him, sitting there at the machine, what kind of prescription drugs are you taking? He was embarrassed. He wouldn't tell us. Later on, he told his girlfriend what he had done. and he has a lot of pain. So what I'm getting at, if there's not a notch, and this comes up and it falls straight down, then that tells us there is no elasticity in the arteries, or the arteries are beginning to stiffen up. What does that mean? Simply this: when your heart beats, the arteries are supposed to flex, but when the arteries begin to stiffen, imagine this being your artery, and when the heart beats, it tries to open, but it can't. What is the danger in that? As the first thing that can be a sign of is arteriosclerosis. Now then, the blood's going to go one way or the other. It's going to push the blood on through the arterial system. Now, this is something, operators, you need to know. In the body of a human being, there is somewhere between 80 and 100,000 miles of arteries, veins, and capillaries. That sounds like a lot, but that's just the way it is. So when you have open heart surgery, what do? They operate on about that much of your arteries. That's called the bypass. If that much of your arteries is bad, what about the other 999,000 miles? So, we're going to have more than just that throughout our body. So what happens when it's arteriosclerosis and it's not flexing and the blood has pressure against the walls of the artery, eventually it's going to find a weak place. Okay, and that's the danger of arteriosclerosis. Now then, the second thing that it can be causing them not to flex is called atherosclerosis, which is plaquing, or where the cholesterol begins to build up on the walls of the artery. What causes this? Well, according to the research that was founded back down through the years, especially in 1998, when the three guys won the Nobel Prize in medicine for the discovery of the nitric oxide pathway, they all wrote this, that the arteries are healthy when the endothelium, which is the inner lining of the arteries will be healthy when it produces enough nitric oxide to keep the walls of the artery like Teflon. And when the endothelium, which produces nitric oxide the way it should, then the walls of the artery become like Velcro, therefore sticking everything that comes through, so therefore creating what you and I know as blockages, and where they have to go in and put stents in, plaque breaks off, causes heart attacks, etc. Now then, the third thing, in which, in my opinion, what I've read and what I've studied, this can be one of the most dangerous, is called calcification. And the reason for that is when the walls of the artery begin to accumulate the calcium that's not going to where it's supposed to go in the body, but collects in the walls of the artery, and they become calcified. Now remember this, when something becomes calcified, it can very well easily break. Not just burst, but it can break. So therefore, that's the danger of calcification. Now then, number 4 is called the thickening of the artery walls. And if you'll pay attention right here, it's called the muscularis. And what happens on the thickening of the walls of the artery, they begin to get thicker. Unfortunately, rather than swelling or getting thick to the outside, they get thick toward the inside, therefore cutting off blood circulation to the rest of the body. Now then, that's the 4 things: arteriosclerosis, atherosclerosis, calcification, large artery wall thickening. Now then, we want to go in with this down to the chart here that we got right here, and you'll see the EEI, which is called the ejection elastic index. That represents your large arteries. Normal on that is 0.4 to 0.8. You want it between 0.4 and 0.8. If it's in the high, like this guy right here on our sample test, and let me tell you this guy had just come out of an exercise class that they run this on. This was a 21-year-old, so that put it into the large, or into the high. Normally, if you find people that's in the high, there's some things that, again, a lot of exercise. Immediately after you exercise, we take the test, you will find this. Otherwise, most of the time you will find this in somebody that just walks in off the street, takes the DPA test. This will be low. You want it to be between 0.4 and 0.8. If it's in that, it's normal. If it's below that, and you're going to have, now operators, again, don't diagnose. But you can say it could be, or this could happen. But they're going to ask you, people are going to ask you, when that shows up in the low, they're going to ask you if I got a blockage. You can't tell them they got a blockage. All you can tell them is look. And this is a scenario I've always used. You take a water hose, you hook it to a faucet, you cut it on, there's nothing on the other end, it's running free. The only thing that can slow that water down is either a kink or something build up in that water hose that keeps it from flowing freely. So that's the things you can say. The second chart is called the DDI, which is the dichrotic index. This one, I tell people what it does. Normal in it is 0.2 to 0.4. This one is the humans can actually control this one, their cells, or they're the ones that causes it to be high or low or whatever. And if it's high, again, a lot of things can point toward anxiety. A lot of things can point toward depression. One thing, I'm going to interject this in. I've not seen a whole lot of them, but you will see one, or I have seen some of them along the line. If you have somebody that comes in the next morning and after they've had a party night, they'll usually test pretty high in all of them, but that's because of alcohol contents in their blood. Okay? You can't tell them that, but you be aware that will happen to you every once in a while. And if that is low, some things that can cause that is too much intake of too many sweets, too much caffeine, soda pops, things like that, and that will cause it to be low. And so you need to kind of control that yourself. The third thing, which is your DEI, or your capillaries, or your peripherals. Now you remember I told you back earlier we were going to kind of tie some things in together. If your hydration levels are low, more than likely your DEI is going to be low also, because it's hard to get thick blood into the peripherals. That's the way this machine works. It works by looking at the hemoglobin clusters going through your blood veins as we test you. Now, hemoglobin flows in cluster-like form, in grape-like forms. And what happens is they flow, then the light will go down through those clusters, and the more light it sees, the better your test will wind up being, okay? And as your arteries begin to deteriorate or not stretch the way they should, then those clusters will begin to flow in oblong shapes. Therefore, the light can't show through them, and therefore that's how the machine knows what grade you are. And I'm fixing to explain that to you. Now then, let's go back up here to the middle form, which is called a APG. That is called an accelerated plethysmogram waveform. This puts the test on you. This puts the grade on you. And let me show you how that does that. If you'll look right down here, you will find waveform representing each grade. And if you'll look up here on every individual test, this waveform will match whatever grade this is. Now then, the deeper, now remember this, and you're going to see a lot of this. If a person tests a D, a C, a D, or E, this waveform below the line, will shorten up, and it will change forms, okay? That simply is telling me that the arteries are not stretching the way they should. They're not flexing the way they should, so the arteries, the light is hitting whatever's down there, and it's having to come back. So if it's an A waveform, it goes straight down, it bottoms out, it comes straight back up. It comes straight back up to the middle line, which is an A waveform. The second one is a B. It will come down. If you've got a chart, if you hadn't, we need to get you one to where you can study this. A B waveform, it will come down, go down, and come almost back to the line, and it will make one little bobble. And that's indicative of a B waveform. A C will go down and come immediately back up, and it will almost be parallel across the bottom, but the waveform all the time is getting shorter in the distance it travels downward. Now your D, if you'll watch real close, the D is beginning to be where the B begins to change forms. Rather than the long wave being on the left side, it will turn to be on the right side. It will just reverse. And your right leg becomes longer and shorter. So, and I know that sounds crazy long. It's longer than the left leg, but it's also shorter overall. Then when you get to an E, if you will look at an E waveform versus a B waveform, they have exactly reversed. The long leg is on your right side, the short leg is on your left side. That is an E. F, you'll notice that the short leg is all but disappearing now. Okay? And that means it's just going down and hitting like almost like an A would, except on the opposite side, meaning it's not being able to penetrate as deep as it should. And G, if you'll notice that, it gets even further, becoming more one parallel with one waveform going deep. Now, what does this mean? You heard Dr. LeBron talking about the product that we promote, which is called CardioVibe. If you are an A waveform, you actually don't particularly need us right now. But operators, you need to get it through your client's head, into their minds, that if they are an A, they need to do something to stay there. And as long as their body is producing enough nitric oxide, then they will maintain that. If they are a B waveform, this is the first sign that the endothelium is beginning to malfunction. What is that? It's not producing enough nitric oxide. Now, why is nitric oxide so important? You need to go back, and if you have to, go research the miracle molecule. It has become the most studied molecule in the history of man since the winning of the Nobel Prize. Nothing happens in the body without the presence of nitric oxide. And if you are a C or a D, that means that it's not producing near enough nitric oxide, or maybe not even any, and therefore you need to supplement with it. Well, how much do we need to supplement? A B needs to supplement with 5 grams or 1 scoop. That is to maintain where you're at. If you are a C or a D, you need to supplement with 2 scoops a day, 1 preferably in the morning without food, 1 at night without food, okay? Now then, if you get down in the range of the E's and the F's, then you're going to need more. Now this is, we don't get into what people can afford. We just tell them what the machine says, and then they make their own decisions. But if you're an E or an F, for at least 30 to 60 days, maybe even 90, you need to take 3 scoops a day. 1 morning, noon, and night. All you do is take a scoop of the powder, put it in 8 to 10 ounces of water, stir it real good, let it dissolve, drink it. And that's the E's and F's. The G's, actually what the machine says, operators, is this. What the information you'll read on the machine is, if they test a G, you might as well, you need to recommend they go see a cardiologist. Unfortunately, and what I found in the last 10 years with our people that are coming to us, they're not doctor people anyway, so they're not likely going to go see a doctor. So you need to get them to take as much as their body can stand. How much can their body stand? Believe me, if you take too much, your body will tell you. It will start detoxing so fast that you'll know it, because you in the bathroom will be best friends for a little while. Now, what does all this mean? Let me give you just a little bit of statistics, operators, and you need to notate this. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer in the United States. It's the #1 killer in the world. 2,500 minimum people a day die with cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, things like this, sudden cardio death. That is equal to 7 Boeing 747s going down every day without any survivors. If we had 7 airplanes to crash in one day anywhere in the world, they would shut the whole aviation system down. Yet we are watching 2,500 people a day die with cardiovascular disease. What are we trying to do? We're trying to get out there to the masses. Why is the medical industry not using this? Your guess is as good as mine. But in 1998, three doctors in the United States won the Nobel Prize in Medicine by the discovery of the nitric oxide pathway. Proven, now there's 3 of them wrote books. Dr. J. Joseph Prendergast wrote a book called The Uncommon Doctor. Dr. Louis Ignarro wrote a book called No More Heart Disease. Dr. John Cook wrote a book called The Cardiovascular Cure. These guys are medical doctors. They can say whatever they want to. But remember what they did say, that arginine could possibly be the magic bullet for cardiovascular disease, and we're still not using it. Now, can you just go down to the drugstore or go down to the health food store and buy arginine tablets and it works? No, you can't. It has to be done in a certain formulation, just like they proved then. The things that worked together was arginine, citrulline, and minerals. The minerals open up the nitric oxide pathway. Arginine goes back into the system, turns to nitric oxide. It's a gas which dissipates pretty quick, but the L-citrulline turns into arginine, which turns back into a gas, which also makes it to where you can kind of time release it into the system gets what it needs. So therefore, these are the things that you need to learn, what the statistics are. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, and especially ladies, listen to me, of the million people that will die this year from cardiovascular death, over 500,000 of them will be women. 300,000 women will die with what they call sudden cardio death. What does that mean? One day they're walking down the street, the next day they drop dead with a heart attack or something. So this is a massive epidemic in the United States. That's why I think we have to have a passion to get out and forewarn people. I have seen numbers and numbers over the last 10 years avoid heart attacks, avoid strokes, simply, and by their testimonies and by my testimony, in 2004 I was diagnosed with severe cardiovascular problems. Never went back to the doctor except to go and 8 years later have a heart cath run to see where I was at. And the doctor came out and told my wife after 8 years on arginine and the things that I supplement that I had no plaque whatsoever as a 59-year-old. And he told her that's unheard of. People that age are supposed to have plaque in the arteries. So does it work? It has worked in my life. It's worked in my body. So will it work in everybody else's? If what they've wrote is true about the nitric oxide, yes, it will work and will help sustain the body to do what it should do. So with wrapping this portion of the training up, when we come back, we'll have another segment with you, going into some other deeper things. And like I said, I don't know whether they're going to take questions today or not, but we will do the best we can to answer any questions that you have, show you anything we need to show you if you didn't understand how to hook the machine up, get it running, we'll do that again. So whatever y'all need to do. So we'll leave this segment off and start up again in about 15 minutes. Thank you.